Now with the latest weekend headlines, it's the ITV News.
Talks to resume in a bid to end the war in Ukraine. The latest efforts come as attack and counter-attack continue on the ground. But despite claims of a shift in Russian focus away from Kiev, we see the devastation caused close to the capital.
It looks like an earthquake hit. There is complete destruction absolutely everywhere.
Also tonight, is the Chancellor about to announce new measures to help with the cost of living crisis? And the stars align in Tinseltown. It's Oscars night in Hollywood.
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. Another round of peace talks aimed at ending the conflict in Ukraine is set to get underway in the morning. The fresh diplomatic efforts follow a weekend in which the US has had to clean up what appears to have been a diplomatic misstep by the country's president. Joe Biden yesterday called on Vladimir Putin to be removed from power. Today, his Secretary of State said there was no such policy of regime change. From Ukraine, Geraint Vincent reports.
In the borderlands, the battle for Ukraine rages on. In a part of the country where the Russian invasion began, a Ukrainian counterattack. In the diplomatic standoff on either side of this war, meanwhile, American officials have been trying to clarify their position after their president described Vladimir Putin as a butcher who cannot remain in power.
I think the President, the White House, made the point last night that quite simply, President Putin cannot be empowered to wage war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else. As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter.
The Russian Defense Ministry released footage of what it describes as its airstrikes on Ukrainian ammunition stores. But it is Russia's bombing of cities and how to stop it that Ukraine's president is most concerned with. Mr. Zelensky criticised his allies in the West who are still pondering whether to supply his armed forces with fighter jets. If only, he said, they had 1% of the courage shown by Ukrainian soldiers. 2 of those soldiers were brought home to Lviv to be laid to rest today. The Ukrainian defence of this country has been valiant and it continues to be extremely effective, but it comes at a painful cost. Among the mourners, defiance.
We have not 20 or 30,000 army. Today, 40 million Ukrainian people, huge Ukrainian army. Only victory. I believe in our victory.
Talks between negotiating teams from Ukraine and Russia are to resume in Turkey tomorrow. But in this conflict's immediate future, a stalemate seems most likely, and the soldiers' sacrifice won't stop. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Western Ukraine.
Officials in Kiev have warned that Russia may attempt to split Ukraine in half. It follows the announcement by Moscow of a change in strategy to focus their firepower on the east of the country. But as our global security editor Rohit Katru saw firsthand today, their bombardment has already inflicted huge damage close to the capital.
Shevchenko survived, but not much else did. A statue of the Ukrainian poet still stands after almost everything else was wiped out by a Russian airstrike. The library was hit. Residents take the books they might have once borrowed. The town hall was destroyed too, and the shop for kids, and the pharmacy, and even the off-licence. Bishiv is a village 1 hour from Kiev, and it tells 2 stories. The crater reveals the force of Russian might. But there's a story of failure too. More than a month into this war, life of sorts carries on. The Russian troops never arrived, although plans were laid to stop them getting in.
It looks like an earthquake hit. There is complete destruction absolutely everywhere. But maybe the most interesting thing to see is not the fact this place was flattened, but the fact it wasn't flattened into submission.
In the capital, monuments are being protected as history is rewritten. Because, met with a fierce resistance, Moscow now says it no longer wants to focus on the capital. But the Ukrainians don't believe that.
We cannot trust them. At the moment, we don't see any withdrawal of Russian troops from certain areas of Kiev.
Because you needn't go far from Kiev to see the area around it was in Russia's sights until not long ago. And the strategists protecting the capital believe nothing has changed. Rohit Kachru, ITV News, Bishiv.
Well, back here, the Chancellor has hinted there could be more help on the way for families struggling with increasing energy bills, fuelled in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Rishi Sunak faced criticism after he failed to increase support in his spring statement last week. Well, David Wood joins me now. David, how soon may we see any more help then?
I think there may be a fair wait, Lucrezia. Treasury sources saying today that it is just speculation that they're already working on an extra package of support, although I think important to note that's not an outright denial, though. Already most houses will be getting £350 to help them with the rising bills. Part of that, though, is a loan that needs to be paid back. But there is growing uneasiness in the Tory party that may not be enough support. I've spoken to a number of backbenchers who want the Chancellor to go further and promise more support ahead of May's local elections. This is quite a contentious political issue. But across government, there is a lot of work, I'm told, going on to try and work out how costs can be cut and which levers can be pulled, with a focus on trying to make life easier going into the autumn, with the energy price cap expected to rise in October. We may get the long-awaited energy security strategy this week, how the UK could generate more of its own energy. There is growing expectation among some Tories that that should include short-term help for bills. I'm told that's not going to be the case, so what is growing is pressure on the Chancellor to do more. All right, David, thank you. Police have named a woman who was found dead at a property in Yorkshire on Friday. She was 35-year-old Kirsty Ellis. Early investigations show her body had been in the property in Stanningley for a number of weeks. A man and a woman, both 35, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Bosses from two of P&O Ferries' rivals have been invited to talks with government officials. It follows the company's controversial sacking of 800 staff. DFDS and Stena Lines are expected to discuss concerns over chaos at ports during the Easter holidays. And Shanghai is to enter a COVID lockdown. No one will be allowed to leave their home and public transport will be suspended. The new measures come as more than 5,000 cases were recorded yesterday. Sport, and there was a dramatic finish in the second Grand Prix of the Formula One season. While seven-times world champion Lewis Hamilton could only manage 10th in Saudi Arabia, there is a new big rivalry brewing, as Chris Scudder explains.
Used to a clear track ahead of him, dodging through traffic was not the plan for Lewis Hamilton. But the former world champion's lowly 15th was quickly accelerated to a place in the top 6. Up ahead, the man in pole, Sergio Perez, could not have timed his pit stop worse. Moments later, Nicholas Latifi crashed.
He's got on the power a bit early, hasn't he?
And by the time the safety car was cleared, Charles Leclerc was in the lead for the second race running. Then more bad luck for Hamilton. Just when he needed to change his tyres, the pit lane was blocked by a broken down car. He dropped back to finish 10th.
Norris has gone past.
And if Hamilton against Verstappen was last season's great rivalry, it's quickly being replaced by Leclerc and his Ferrari against Verstappen.
Takes the lead!
The lead changed hands several times in a dramatic finish.
Such a close battle once again!
Verstappen could celebrate his first victory of the new season. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And finally, in just a few hours' time, the Oscars get underway with the stars of the big screen back on the red carpet. Jane Campion's Western The Power of the Dog leads the way with 12 nominations. Sir Kenneth Branagh's Belfast has 7. From Hollywood, our arts editor Nina Nanar reports.
Will it be Netflix's brooding Western, The Power of the Dog, which has 12 nominations in all? Or is this the year of Apple TV's Coda? A drama about a hearing daughter living with her deaf family. Whichever gets the night's big prize, Best Film, it would mark a first for streaming services.
Speed, love, I want speed.
Here we go. Not that any of that bothers Beryl.
Art. I'm obsessed. All I ever wanted to do was to go to art school.
The Welsh factory worker who's the creation of British animator and director Joanna Quinn. Now Beryl could net Joanna an Oscar for Best Animated Short.
You know, the really funny thing is that Beryl is just so unglamorous, you know, and she's come to the most glamorous place on the planet.
One former Oscar winner is calling for the night of celebration to reflect on the situation in Ukraine. Sean Penn has been filming there and says President Zelensky, a former actor, must be allowed to address the guests somehow, or there should be a boycott. LA's Ukrainian community, screening films from their home country to raise money this weekend, say a message from President Zelensky should be included.
I strongly believe that he deserves to appear with his being present at the Oscars event. And I'm pretty sure he's already penciled in the program.
Get everyone together and get rounding people up, man. It's happening. It's happening now.
Politics has often found a place at the Oscars. One British nominee has a hard-hitting short film starring Riz Ahmed about immigration, racism and identity.
I think it says something about the moment we're in, that people are, are willing to embrace those kind of subjects, and not only embrace them but kind of champion them.
Will nominees who've had COVID, like Sir Kenneth Branagh, his film Belfast has 7 nominations, be well enough to attend? Well, the controversial move to award 8 of the Oscars before the live broadcast means Academy Award organisers are asking the guests to arrive on this red carpet about an hour earlier so they can be seated inside to support their colleagues. It remains to be seen how many of them are actually going to do that. And then, of course, it's all down to winners and losers and, of course, the inevitable controversies. Nina Nanar, ITV News at the Oscars.
And that is it from me and the teams here in the US and Ukraine. Good night.